Jenna.
I'm Lauren. And we did the Viking garden, which is the Viking school vegetable garden.
So the problem that we were presented with was that a lot of the kids don't have enough meals per day. Tamron said that a lot of them, their only meal in the day is what they get from school. And that's a problem because when you're a growing child, you need the right nutrients and you need to have like food to grow. And so there's the risk of malnourishment, and they have limited availability of resources, and they don't really understand anything about nutrition, so and the parents don't really know anything, so they need help with that.
So how do we know this is a problem? We know this is a problem through having our video chat conference calls with Tamron, as well as previous service projects. Although they didn't do the Viking garden, they did the Varkplaas garden, and so we know that nutrition is a huge factor with these children, and the whole idea of educating them and becoming aware and conscious of healthy eating habits. So we try to want to implement that, and we also know this from the pictures and blogs on the QU blog site, and the pictures really depict that, like as you can see here, it's kind of deteriorated the garden, so we want to try to fix it up, obviously.
Okay. So they obviously need to have food, and they need to have like their own way of developing or planting and growing food because it can get expensive purchasing it all the time, and they need nutrients and vitamins and minerals and stuff to keep them healthy.
And we also, we want to really, Tamron's really big on educating them, so we planned a brochure, which we'll pass out at the end so you guys can see, that kind of educates them on the idea of nutrition, and we'll try to implement that as we build the garden so they can have an educational experience as well. So then when we leave, they can still know how to eat nutritiously, and like if they're eating spinach, they know that that builds iron in their body and like builds strong bones, etc.
And we have it in English, and then Tamron said she'd be willing to translate it, so hopefully if she wants us to follow through with this, that we can bring it there with us. So our solutions, we're going to build the vegetable garden. These are pictures from the other gardens that they've done in the past. And we're hoping that we can plant enough like of the veggies that will be able to feed all 200 students, and there's some sustainability with some of the vegetables so that they can continue with it throughout.
And what are some of the ways we can solve this problem? So as Jenna mentioned, the big problem is nutrition and the fact that they aren't getting a good source of food at school. That's kind of the main meal they're really getting. Some people at home don't have the resources to get a good meal. So we really want to try to implement that through this garden as well as educate them. And so we know that in the past they've had the gardens in the community, and that they have been, as Mel and Aubrey had mentioned, like because of the strong winds and everything, they've become deteriorated. So we think that looking back on the previous gardens, we can help solve this problem as well.
Okay, so for the supplies, we're obviously going to need some seeds to plant. We're going through different suggestions that Cameron had and things that we thought would be nutritious as well, trying to keep a variety of things. We spoke with a nutrition professor here, asking what things she thought would be appropriate, and took into consideration both what Tamron wanted and what was healthy. So we've kind of decided things like potatoes, spinach, carrots, and squash or pumpkins, but they all grow at different times of the year. So while we're there, we're going to plant what's appropriate at the time and leave space. So we have to purchase them when we get there. And Tamron told us that the shovels and rakes.
So there's a couple of shovels and wheelbarrows there. However, depending on the budget and what kind of trees we want to buy and everything, we're going to see if we can buy shovels once we're there. Because obviously it's not a huge deal if we each have a shovel, but it would obviously help to have a good amount. But we also want more vegetables for the students, so we're going to try to figure out budgets and see how many shovels there are once we get down there.
And we're also, on top of the vegetable garden, we are hoping to get trees to plant, so like an orange or apple tree. So that gives them fruits as well. And the other benefit of that was Tamron was hoping that these trees would be planted where the kids run around and play, so they have shade, so they're not constantly out in the sun. And then obviously we're gonna hopefully be able to do that and add on. We're bringing our own gloves and stuff from home and purchasing them here that we already have.
So the items we'll be purchasing are the gloves we're going to bring from home, and then once we get there, we're going to have the seeds, the fertilizer, compost will be provided. And the seeds, we looked into 2 places, Stodels and Stark Aries, which Tamron has gone through before, so it's close distance to the garden. And we also are trying to implement kind of a water barrel, so that way they don't have to use the drinking water that they have. So depending on the cost, again, we'll try to put a water barrel next to the garden. That way who's ever taking care of the garden can just use that instead of the water they get delivered to them.
Okay, so obviously it's going to take replanting and maintenance to obtain the vegetables. So there's going to be constant weeding, and then when the vegetables are ready, they're going to have to harvest them and then replant. So we know that there's we have the maintenance of the fence as well. We know that there's a maintenance worker that's going to be there to help out with that, but we're also hoping that the kids can get involved with that, but we'll talk about that in the later slide, I guess.
And also we want, our main thing is sustainability as well, so we're hoping that the vegetables will also feed the children, as well as have some left over that the community can sell in order to raise money for new seeds, so that way when the plants finish harvesting they can plant new seeds.
Okay, so we had a little difficulty with trying to find a specific budget. As Lauren already said, we went through 2 nurseries, we contacted them. One, Stark Aries, was given to us by Tamron, and we sent an email explaining what we were doing, and he gave us an idea of prices and what they have available. And then we found another nursery that is called Stodels, and it's a little further away, I think, but he gave us prices of certain seeds and packages of what we would need. So we went off of the prices he gave us, and we made a rough estimate of, we spaced out, we found the spacing from other research. So the carrots and spinach are roughly 15 centimeters apart, and taking into account the size of the garden, we figured out that in every row there could be this many vegetables planted, and so we're aiming, I think, probably around 3 rows at a time, depending on the vegetable. And so they're going to plant it, and then they're going to wait for it to grow and then harvest it, and then the next 3 rows over is going to be the next set, so that they have a constant flow. So we wanted to get a little bit extra of each. So the squash and pumpkins and potatoes are sustainable themselves, which means that we could take maybe 15 to 20% of what we produce of the potatoes to save to replant for the next set of crops. And then it's the same with the squash and pumpkins, the seeds.
And so this came to a total of 2,650 rands, which we converted was $1 US dollar equals about 9.18 rands. So the price of just the seeds is around $277 to $300.
Okay, so to implement it, we're going to need a lot of teamwork, and hopefully the whole class will be there, and we're going to use the I think Tamara mentioned that there would be volunteers from the community that will be helping us. We would really like to use the kids to help us out and be part of it because it's their school, but we understand that they have classes and things that they need to learn. But we're hoping that eventually Tamara will be able to incorporate some sort of science course or like education on how to garden and like healthy eating and stuff so that they can incorporate the gardening for them.
And we're also aware of the fact that there's a maintenance worker, so we're hoping that once we leave, they'll be able to take care of the garden and do the weeding and picking the vegetables and whatnot as they grow.
Okay, so this is a big project to take on. We only have a day, I believe, to do it. So we're really hoping, if it's possible, to have it cleared out as much as possible, weeds and dirt and stuff. But we understand that's not 100% possible, so we'll have to take that into account of timing. And then, since we're not filling up the entire garden, we'll have a little bit, we'll do a couple rows, and we'll assign like people to certain vegetables and plant those, and then if we're able to do the trees, we'll have assignments for the trees.
So the project schedule obviously would be ideal if they cleared all the debris and the weeds and everything that are on the garden now, if they cleared that before we got there. However, we know that might not be an option, so we'll have to take that in consideration and try to work fast in order to get the project done as soon as possible. And we also are hoping that the seeds will be ready for us once we get there. If not, we'll obviously have to go and pick them up, but it would be ideal in order to save time that they're already at the site, so that way we can plant them. And regarding the schedule, we have to use a ruler to measure out, as Jenna had mentioned, there's going to be different sections. So depending on the carrots and the potatoes, those usually grow between 90 and 130 days. So after those finish growing, those will be picked and then new ones will be planted. So we have to obviously wait until that time period for vegetables to already be grown so people can start doing the aftermath of what we did.
Okay, so our long-term goal is obviously healthy eating and to provide the food for the kids so that they can grow up and be strong, and that the vegetables that we plant will continue to produce food for the kids, and that they'll be interested and involved in their healthy eating and education.
So some of the challenges, as the first group had mentioned, the wind, weather conditions, we obviously don't know if the vegetables are going to grow depending on the weather. We also need to make sure that people are monitoring the garden weekly, watering it, picking out weeds, making sure the fence is still stable, no rodents or insects are getting in. And we've never planted a garden, we've never planned how to plant a garden. We also don't know the site, so those are both challenges, as well as the communication with Tamron and the nurseries. So it's kind of a cultural divide right now, as we don't really know like what they want exactly, who's going to be helping us. So that those are definitely challenges, as well as limited resources that we will have, as well as trying to use the least amount of money to implement.
Okay, so obviously we had fundraisers, the flea market and Eli's, and then donations from the website, and we're planning to purchase some things with our own money there.
So measuring success, we want to make sure that the students are becoming educated, so we will get in touch with Tamron afterwards, maybe see pictures and videos from on the blog, as well as having them care about the vegetables, like are they actually eating these vegetables, do they like the vegetables, are they using the pamphlet to continue on with a healthy diet, and are the plants growing? We can figure that out through pictures Tamron will send us.
Okay, so as Mel and Aubrey said before, it's been done before from the Varkplaas Community Gardens, so that's a picture of it from last year, and we looked at their videos and presentations and the pictures and reports that they did to get through.
So obviously we'll know that because of the winds and weather, we'll have to work on the fences, as well as being able to maintain a sustainable garden. And so after we do the garden, we obviously want to check in to make sure the garden's sustainable and it's still lasting and the crops are still growing and everything. So, and this is the brochure, but we ran out of time, so.
if you guys want to look at it.
Questions?
I just have a quick question about the fence. Wait, what are you guys gonna do to the fence?
The fence is already there, but
Is
think
that
there's
one just like a regular chain link fence?
it has wood posts and I think wire around it. Tamron had explained
She
to
said
us.
part of it was broken, like I think
But
one
that-
or two posts.
So what are you guys gonna do? Are you gonna put like try and put like a mesh thing like everything?
We're just gonna continue on with the supplies that are there,
We
but
just I think we have to replace posts. Is
that's
really
yeah.
what it was.
Wait, wasn't the problem though the wind? Why the?
We don't have a tarp though. We have just like
I
wire.
think there's like holes. There's
That's not yeah.
like if you can kind of see there, it's like wires.
It's not really.
And then
like a
that
mesh.
big green tank we're assuming is where they got their water from, water source. But it's,
Emily?
One of the challenges that we had when we went last year was that we were nervous that vegetables wouldn't grow because there wasn't too much soil. It was like all sand in there. Have you just thought about how to address that?
Okay, so we were told that Tamron was giving us that compost would be provided, but we don't know the quality of the compost, which is a good point we should look into. But at the same time, we also can't spend like
we're
a large
hoping
amount on
if
that.
we have the extra money, which we're not sure.
We can upgrade
I think
to.
eventually our crops did grow in the sand.
It's just a
somehow.
matter of, yes, Hope Garden, it just, you have to, all that has gotta be
Yep.
ripped, you
What
know.
they doing that? Was that part? Did they already? Like,
Well, that's one of my questions, is there's a lot of emphasis on someone else doing the planning or, of the project. So what happens if that doesn't? How much time do you think that's gonna add to your project?
Well, as we had mentioned, it obviously would be ideal, but we do know that it might not happen. So I think we're only given a day to do this project, if I'm not mistaken. So we're just hoping that we can split up the tasks and already figure out, we already have the measurements and whatnot, so depending on how many Tamron wants to plant of each, if she agrees with our measurements and whatnot, it'll probably take like, I'd say an hour or two just to hoe it up.
Because
Okay,
we're
that's,
not doing the entire, we're not doing the entire garden, so at least we need to get the parts that we're planting now, and then hopefully the maintenance worker, whoever's there, when we leave, they can keep doing that as they continue to plant, replant everything.
Let me just put this out there that, well, let me ask you first, what, in your limited amount of time that you have, what do you think would be a success of this project? Obviously, if you get the whole thing, but say there were limitations that popped
The
up.
trees.
the trees definitely, because those are already partly grown, if I'm not mistaken.
They're
You
in,
just
like,
like
the bucket.
put the little thing in the ground. So we're hoping that because it's already half grown and hopefully it'll sprout sooner. But, and I know Tamron really emphasized on the trees as well because they have vegetable gardens in the communities.
And so where are you gonna get the water barrel and for the rainwater?
Okay, so that we can get at Stodels, but depending on the cost, we didn't really, that was kind of like a stretch for us because we didn't think it was it wasn't a necessity, so.
And so how's that water then go from the buckets, the barrels to the gardens?
Okay, so the ones we researched, they have a spout on them, and we were just figuring taking like a watering can or something and using that, just to.
Which we'll have to get, you're saying.
Yeah,
Or
I
just
think
a
that was
cup.
in the budget.
A cup for the whole garden.
Well,
Any other questions from the Quinnipiac Gallery? Larissa, do you have one or anyone else?
What do you guys say about the seminars? Didn't you say something about like teaching them how to eat healthy?
okay, so we had, I don't know if it's still being passed around, but at some point while we're there, not even like during the garden obviously, but just we're gonna have Tamron translate them obviously because it has English and I don't know how much of that they will know. So we're gonna try to give that to them so they can just understand like what vegetables do for your body, what fruits do for your body, and like what type of meal is a good meal, and it's just
We're gonna
stable
try and
diet.
simplify it all for them to understand it. But what the big point of it was I know Tamron loves to like give them as much education as they can get. So not only do they get like the food benefits, like they get to eat, but like they get to understand other things with it. And that's just an extra thing that we're hoping to be able to do, but it all depends on the ability to
Was
incorporate
that
that.
like a one-time thing, or do you think Cameron's gonna like continue to teach them?
Well, we made the pamphlet as an example of something that we could teach them about, like what foods will give you strong bones and things like that, you know, because a lot of the other things that she had talked about us with was like the kids, they get injured and they don't see doctors and stuff, so they don't have proper healing. So even in some of the vegetables, I think like they promote tissue growth and healing.
Like calcium,
so,
obviously,
yeah.
can help prevent like a broken bone or something.
Yeah, you
Well,
know,
not
it's like a
prevent, but-
small little thing to get them somewhere else from where they are.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, the seminars, and just like teaching them, and just if you could, just like talk to Cameron and see if like he could like keep doing that when you guys leave, that would be, you know, really good.
Meg, one last quick question?
Yeah, it's just going off that, it's more of how is this, they can see the pamphlet, they can read it and everything, but then they're gonna go back to their life. So how are you gonna make an emphasis on this, and are you gonna see about Tamron talking with the teachers and working with the teachers to try and incorporate that in their lessons perhaps?
Yep, so that's a good point, because I was actually emailing Tamron and she said that they're gonna try, depending on like, they're gonna try to make it a motivational, so like if a student does well, like if a class does well or something, they'll be able to go outside to the garden and research. She said we could divide it up into each vegetable has like a team and they can take care of it, they can watch how it grows. She also mentioned something about teaching them how to, the process of photosynthesis, but I think that's more difficult and challenging. That's why we kind of stuck to the food route.
So eventually they can work their way up to more complex things, I guess, like photosynthesis.
Yeah, but we're just hoping that as they see that vegetables grow, they'll be more keen on, oh, I raised this, like I'll be, so. we're
Yeah,
hoping.
like that's just an example of things that they can learn, but like I always found when I was in school, like hands-on things like this are really more helpful than just sitting there and listening to it. So that's why we're trying to take the educational component of it and combine it with the garden so that the kids are more enthusiastic about it, and hopefully our hope is that they'll want to learn it. So.
Nice, very good.